all this news is a win for Justin, you would say, correct?
Yes.
But it's interesting, as to summarize, correct me if I'm wrong here, we're looking at a filing from both Freedman as well as here from Lively.
What if Blake Lively always suspected she wouldn't come out on top in her lawsuit against Justin Baldoni? New reports now claim powerhouse attorney Brian Freedman dropped evidence so explosive it reshaped the entire narrative. What exactly did he find, and how does it tear Blake's accusations apart? Stay with us as we break down the legal bombshell that could flip this case upside down and reveal a version of events Blake never intended to go public.
But it's interesting, as to summarize, correct me if I'm wrong here, we're looking at a filing from both Freedman as well as here from Lively, an email they attached where she is attempting to withdraw. Here's the email effectively. Sorry, I'm making sure you can see it here. Here it is. She is trying to partially dismiss without prejudice, basically her emotional distress, all that stuff. Can you sort of explain what we're looking at and what this request for, before we get into the craziness of it, what is Blake actually requesting here?
Sure. So Blake has a bunch of legal theories or claims in her current complaint, and at any point she can dismiss one or a combination of them as she sees fit. In federal court, it has to be stipulation to dismiss, which means the other side has to agree to the form of how the dismissal is happening. So that's what you're looking at here. And there's a fight, which we'll probably talk about, as to how the dismissal is being done. Is it with or without prejudice? And I could talk about that if you'd like, or I don't know if your viewers already know about that.
It started like countless celebrity controversies. Blake Lively filed suit against Justin Baldoni, accusing him of serious misconduct on set. Her statements painted a clear picture of crossed lines and emotional harm. Media outlets jumped on the story, casting Blake as a victim seeking accountability and Justin as the alleged offender. But not everyone in Hollywood bought it. From day one, insiders whispered that the case didn't quite add up. Legal experts noted the absence of crucial documentation. Many of Blake's claims were built on memory rather than solid proof. Early legal filings left analysts puzzled. Why were so many details vague or unsupported? Commentators hinted at gaps in her story, especially where timelines didn't match production logs or other witnesses' accounts. These weren't small oversights. They raised serious questions about the case's foundation. People began drawing comparisons to past celebrity lawsuits that fell apart under scrutiny. Amber Heard's legal battle with Johnny Depp came to mind. Like Heard's claims, Blake's story lacked the kind of hard evidence needed to withstand intense legal pressure. That's when Brian Freedman entered the picture. Famous for his calculated courtroom tactics, Freedman is known for slicing through high-profile cases with ruthless efficiency. Industry watchers immediately took notice. He's not just a lawyer. He's a strategist who reshapes narratives through evidence, not emotion. Sources say he quietly joined Justin's defense team and began preparing for war long before it was made public. And his approach wasn't about softening Blake's claims. It was about proving they couldn't stand. Freedman reportedly dissected her allegations with surgical precision, exposing weaknesses and contradictions one layer at a time. What he uncovered shocked everyone watching.
Yeah, so there are three types of damages typically in every civil lawsuit. There's what's called economic damages, which is things that you can calculate, like loss of earnings or loss of profits, as long as they're not too speculative. The other thing is called non-economic damages, which is emotional distress. And then the third one is punitive damages, which doesn't really come in until like the very, very end of the case or during trial. Now, those are things you can ask for money. There are separate legal theories that are emotional distress based. So one is intentional infliction of emotional distress, which is, you drove your car into my house while I was watching, and that caused me suffering, right? And the same thing can be with negligent infliction of emotional distress. So that's a legal theory that's based on the harm of emotional distress. But that doesn't mean she can't ask for the non-economic damages through the other remaining claims, such as harassment or hostile work environment.
Mention Brian Freedman in a Hollywood courtroom and people take notice. He's earned a reputation not just for defending celebrities, but for flipping cases in their favor through relentless factual pressure. And when he joined Justin Baldoni's defense, Blake Lively's legal team had every reason to worry. Unlike most attorneys who chip away at one claim at a time, Freedman reportedly targeted Blake's entire story at once. He dug into inconsistencies in her recollections, conflicts, with set records, and how her narrative evolved over time. And then, instead of merely poking holes, he offered a brand new story built on traceable data. This wasn't new for him. Freedman made headlines defending Megan Fox in a now infamous case where her director accused her of misconduct. He turned the accusation around by exposing mismanagement on the director's end. He's also been the legal muscle behind massive studio wins, saving millions in damages. But Freedman's superpower lies in shifting momentum by exposing truth backed with undeniable evidence. In Blake's lawsuit, his goal wasn't to win over jurors with emotion. It was to anchor his argument in verifiable communication and documentation. One legal insider described his methods as strategic warfare instead of a legal debate. Freedman gathered emails, text chains, and statements that reportedly contradicted Blake's claims. Among them, key messages allegedly showed her approving behaviors she would later label as misconduct. The fallout was swift. Her credibility took a major hit. Even Blake's own lawyers reportedly began reassessing their arguments. Freedman's success didn't come from theatrics. It came from showing that Blake's version of events couldn't survive the hard truth. Ironically, it was Blake's own past words that gave him the upper hand.
I submit this affidavit in opposition to the motion to strike by Blake Lively, elaborating the basis for the subpoena to Taylor Swift. On February 14th, 2025, I received a voicemail from a person very closely linked to Taylor Swift, whom I subsequently called back the same day. Out of respect for the individual in question, I am not identifying them at this time. However, should the court direct me to do so, I will comply with a court order. During the February 14th phone call, which lasted approximately 1 hour, the speaker told me that they had been informed that J. Douglas Baldridge, counsel for Taylor Swift and a partner at Venable, had received a phone call from Michael Gottlieb, counsel for Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, during which Mr. Gottlieb requested, on Miss Lively's behalf, that Taylor Swift make a social media statement in support of Miss Lively, given her absence from the Super Bowl that year, and stated that if Miss Swift failed to do so, Miss Lively would release 10 years of private texts with Miss Swift. The individual also told me that they had been informed that Miss Baltridge had accused Mr. Gottlieb of extortion and ended the call. During the same 14th call, the individual told me that they had been informed that 4 or 5 months earlier, Miss Lively had requested that Miss Swift delete her text messages with Miss Lively. I was connected to this individual through a mutual friend who informed me that the individual wanted to talk. We have had several phone calls since February 14th. On a later call with the same individual, the individual told me that Mr. Baltridge had sent a written communication to Mr. Gottlieb relating to their phone conversation. My office issued a subpoena to Taylor Swift for the purpose of seeking the aforementioned written communication. I swear under penalty of perjury. Guys, do you get how big this is and how much this is exploding in Blake and Ryan's face? This is unreal. And again, I'm going to promote this shirt. I put it on again. Taylor Swift is declaring, I am nobody's dragon, girl. I am not your dragon. I've stayed quiet. I've stayed away. But girl, now that I'm getting dragged in this, you're about to get run over because I am not going to hold back. And I would bet you all of this was like, well, you got to do that. You got to serve me. Yes, here's the tip, but you didn't hear it from us. You got to push it. You got to push it. And I bet you there's a part of Taylor that's kind of like, yes, subpoena me, do it. I mean, of course, as Ron said yesterday, Ron Zambrano told us, yeah, every celebrity pushes back, all this sort of stuff happens. But man, this is ugly. Notice.
Was Blake Lively ever truly confident in her case against Justin Baldoni? Some close to the matter say no, and signs of doubt were there from the beginning. Though she presented a bold front to the public, insiders suggest her legal strategy told another story. While Blake framed herself as someone taking a moral stand, Internal communications from her team reportedly showed hesitation. One leaked email suggested narrowing the scope of the claims, a move some say reveals concern about the strength of her case. Privately, her team may have known early on that evidence wasn't on their side. And yet, Blake pushed forward with public statements and interviews emphasizing her resolve. Why? Experts believe her motivation may have been more about optics than outcomes. The comparison to Scarlett Johansson's public contract fight with Disney is telling. Like Scarlett, Blake may have seen this as a reputational battle just as much as a legal one. Losing in court could be managed, but losing public favor would be harder to repair. As Freedman's defense became more aggressive, Blake's public appearances increased. She began highlighting emotional stakes, possibly in an attempt to offset the damage from the courtroom. One legal source noted how her media blitz clashed, with typical legal advice calling it unusually aggressive for someone facing factual challenges. Even more revealing? A leaked message within her team discussed how to manage fallout if the lawsuit collapsed. This supports the idea that Blake was bracing for defeat. As Freedman's evidence began surfacing, emails, statements, production, notes, her public strategy ramped up, not down. And that contrast raised eyebrows. If Blake knew the facts might not support her, why continue? Some speculate she wanted to control the narrative at any cost, even if that meant risking exposure in court.
So her temporal window of where she can have the jury calculate loss, right? Loss of money for her business will probably stop at the point that she filed her lawsuit. And so it's going to be a very small window, because what she would like is like from whatever day she decided she was being retaliated against to today. But Baldoni's team would probably do what I would do, which is like, listen, you cannot blame us for defending ourselves and saying by us defending ourselves in court that you lost money. That's something that's protected. And the court will be like, yep, that's right. So when was the date that you guys filed? Oh, this date? Okay, you can't get any, assuming you can prove loss of profits at all, it cannot go past a certain date, which is probably the date she filed the lawsuit and the New York Times article came out. Because after that, it's too speculative, right? The courts don't allow the juries to enter into and entertain anything that's too speculative, that is so highly controverted. So it's a big, if this is true, which it probably is, I mean, just from a conceptual standpoint, her window for what's called the economic damages, the thing that you could try to calculate, will be a very, very small window and not past the time the New York Times article came out.
Was Blake Lively's lawsuit less about justice and more about controlling the story? On the surface, it appeared to be a strong stand against misconduct. Blake took to the spotlight, presenting herself as a fearless advocate for workplace integrity. But once Brian Freedman got involved, the case began to look very different. The contrast between her confident media image and the courtroom reality became impossible to ignore. Blake carefully curated her public presence. In interviews, she described emotional distress and emphasized boundaries she said had been crossed. Photos from red carpets showed her with somber expressions. Her posture and styling even seemed to underscore the seriousness of her claims. But court documents began painting another picture. According to sources, Freedman obtained emails and documents that directly refuted elements of Blake's allegations. One of the most damaging pieces was a message exchange in which she appeared to greenlight interactions she would later cite as misconduct. Freedman didn't rely on ambiguity. He laid out specific details that couldn't be ignored. He brought receipts, on-set records, and even personal notes where Blake outlined what she felt was acceptable during production. One report mentioned a crew affidavit stating that Blake had never voiced complaints during filming and had even publicly praised Justin's behavior. Suddenly, the narrative of victimhood came under fire. Blake's carefully crafted image couldn't reconcile with the facts coming out. Freedman's legal precision turned the courtroom into a credibility test, and Blake's version didn't. Hold. Analysts were blunt. One called it a collapse of narrative. The longer the case dragged on, the more it appeared to be about media control than legal truth. With each new revelation, Freedman didn't just weaken Blake's case, he exposed it as something far more strategic than sincere.